When a woman has scholarly inclinations, there is usually something wrong with her sexuality. Friedrich Nietzsche. They told you love would save you, that it would be pure, redemptive, unconditional. They promised that somewhere out there, the right woman would heal the wounds you never dare to face alone. It wasn't just in the stories. It was wired into your subconscious by songs, movies, fairy tales, by a world that needed you to believe it. Not because it was true, but because it was useful. What if I told you that promise was never meant to be kept? What if love, the love you ache for, isn't salvation at all, but strategy? And what if the truth is far darker, far more liberating than anyone ever dared to tell you? You weren't raised on reality. You were raised on illusions dressed up as virtues. Fairy tales that crowned love as salvation, women as angels, and yourself as the hero who would be redeemed by finding the right one. But Nietzsche didn't believe in fairy tales. He believed in autopsies. He didn't soothe you with comforting stories. He grabbed the beautiful lies society wrapped around your psyche and tore them apart on the table, piece by piece, exposing the hidden organs, the suppressed instincts, the brutal realities you were taught to deny. Where you were told to see purity, he saw strategy. Where you were told to find healing, he found leverage. And where you wanted salvation, he diagnosed dependency masquerading as devotion. Nietzsche wasn't interested in how you felt about love. He was interested in what love actually was underneath the poetry, the promises, the trembling declarations. And what he found was not the story you were sold. He found a battlefield, a psychological war zone where affection, need, validation, and control traded places faster than you could realize. Where words like forever were less about eternal truth and more about securing emotional leverage. Where smiles were not just expressions of feeling, but tools of influence. And it's not just about women. Nietzsche didn't single out women as villains. He exposed the entire dynamic. The desperate dream of men who crave a woman to heal their fractures, and the quiet, ruthless genius of women who learn to navigate a world built to overpower them by mastering the spaces men forgot to guard. The emotional, the relational, the unseen. You thought love would save you. Nietzsche saw love as a mirror, cracking and splintering, forcing you to confront the parts of yourself you never wanted to see. You thought love was the reward for being good enough. He showed it as a contest for emotional territory, subtle, silent, inevitable. He didn't tell you to hate women. He told you to wake up, to stop worshiping a fantasy, to stop surrendering your agency at the altar of approval, to see not just the strategies others use, but the delusions you willingly embrace to avoid standing alone. Because here's the truth most men cannot handle. You weren't deceived. You wanted the lie. You wanted the soothing myth more than the raw truth. And Nietzsche, with his merciless scalpel, wanted to kill that desire. Not to leave you bitter, but to make you free. He didn't condemn love. He condemned your infantile craving for a love that would fix you without demanding you face yourself. And once you see that, once you feel the fairy tale die inside you, then, and only then, does the real work begin. Because the battlefield Nietzsche uncovered wasn't out there. It was inside you all along. Once Nietzsche rips the mask off love, another brutal truth emerges. The fantasy you fall for is not random. It's perfectly engineered for your deepest insecurity. You don't crave just any fantasy. You crave the one that promises to heal the wound you refuse to face. If you fear you're not enough, you chase the fantasy of unconditional acceptance. If you feel invisible, you dream of someone who sees you like no one else ever has. If you doubt your own power, you hunger for someone who believes in you so fiercely, you can finally believe in yourself. And at first, it looks perfect. The right words, the right looks, the right timing. It feels like destiny. It feels like magic, but it's not magic. It's a mirror. And the worst part? You build the fantasy yourself. You fill in the gaps. You project the meaning. You ignore the warnings. Because the truth is, you want to believe. You want the illusion more than you want clarity. Because clarity would force you to confront your own emptiness. The fantasy thrives on your refusal to see reality. It thrives because you see what you need to see, not what's there. And the person you project it onto isn't even lying. They don't have to. You lie to yourself far more convincingly than anyone else ever could. Nietzsche saw it. He understood that what you call love is often just your own desperate longing, dressed up in someone else's face. He understood that behind every so-called perfect connection lies a hidden equation. Your need plus their appearance of fulfilling it equals your enslavement. This is why betrayal cuts so deeply, because when the fantasy shatters, it's not just a mere mourning. It's the part of yourself you entrusted to an illusion. It's the dream you can't undream. And deep down, you know it. You know you ignored the signs. You know you abandoned yourself just to hold on to the story. This is why Nietzsche didn't offer comfort. He didn't say better luck next time. He said, kill the part of you that craves the fantasy. Because as long as you seek salvation outside yourself, you will be manipulated, not because others are evil, but because you have made yourself vulnerable to anyone who speaks the right code into your broken places. The fantasy isn't innocent. It's a trap disguised as salvation. It flatters you, so you don't question it. It soothes you, so you don't investigate it. It intoxicates you, so you don't escape it until it's too late. And here's the final twist Nietzsche wanted you to see. It's not about them. It's about you. It was always about you. Until you face the wound, until you stop outsourcing your wholeness to someone else's approval, you will keep falling again and again into fantasies of your own making. And every fall will cost you something deeper, because reality doesn't punish you for dreaming. It punishes you for refusing to wake up. By now, you've seen the first crack. It's not innocence that rules these dynamics, it's strategy. And the worst strategies are the ones disguised as love. People don't just interact. They maneuver, they position, they sense weaknesses even if they don't admit it to themselves. They speak in codes, in signals, in calculated gifts and silences, each move shaping perception. It's not always malicious. It's often unconscious. But unconscious doesn't mean harmless. Unconscious just means you won't see it coming unless you sharpen your own vision. This is what Nietzsche tried to force you to confront. Power is always in the room, whether you see it or not. When someone flatters you, they're not simply admiring you. They're inviting you to lower your guard. When someone gives you their vulnerability too quickly, they're not simply being real. They're baiting your empathy to gain influence. When someone mirrors your dreams, your wounds, your language, they're not simply compatible. They are positioning themselves as your fantasy. The dangerous ones don't take power from you. You hand it to them, smiling. You don't lose because they are stronger. You lose because you mistake strategy for sincerity. And make no mistake, sincerity exists, but it is far rarer than you want to believe. Because sincerity demands self-awareness, not just emotion. And most people live in a fog of their own unchecked hunger. So what looks like pure love is often nothing more than mutual manipulation. Two people trading fantasies, flattering each other's illusions, binding each other deeper into a prison built out of meaning. And the more beautiful the words, the more careful you must be. Because the true language of power isn't aggression, it's seduction. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't threaten you. It seduces you to choose it, to believe in it, to defend it. Nietzsche didn't despise humanity because he saw evil. He pitted humanity because he saw how willing we are to abandon ourselves for a few moments of comfort, how easily we trade reality for flattery, dignity for dependence, freedom for emotional crumbs. This is why the naive suffer most, because they still believe in innocence. They still believe that good intentions are enough to protect them. But the world Nietzsche describes isn't built for innocence. It's built for those who can see power moving, even when it wears the face of love. If you can't see it, you'll be used. If you can't read it, you will be rewritten. And if you keep mistaking strategy for innocence, you will keep handing the keys to your life to anyone who tells you the right story at the right moment. You think the danger is in malice. No, the true danger is in your own unwillingness to see how deeply strategy runs through even the softest, most beautiful moments. Because power doesn't knock at your door. It smiles, it loves, it weeps with you, and then it owns you. You're taught to believe emotions are pure, that if someone cries, it means truth, that if someone suffers, it means innocence. But emotions are not holy artifacts. They are tools, weapons, currencies. The real game isn't about emotional purity. It's about emotional leverage. Who controls the narrative? Who controls the sympathy? Who makes themselves the center of emotional gravity so that everyone else orbits their feelings? The one who cries first isn't always the victim. The one who looks hurt isn't always the one being harmed. The most wounded-looking person in the room might also be the most manipulative, because visible wounds create automatic influence. Pain, when displayed skillfully, demands loyalty, demands defense, demands submission. And most people, still trapped in fairy tales about innocence, can't tell the difference. Nietzsche saw it before the world admitted it. Victimhood is power. Emotional pain, real or manufactured, can be weaponized to silence truth, to manipulate guilt, to steal freedom without ever firing a shot. This is the darker ecosystem you live in. Not a battlefield of strength versus strength, but an arena of emotional leverage. And emotional leverage is far more dangerous because it looks like love, it looks like care, it looks like being a good person, it looks like doing the right thing. But underneath, it is a brutal logic. Make others responsible for your emotions, and you control them. The more guilt you can generate, the more obedience you can extract, the more pity you can harvest, the more authority you can wield without question. It's not about right or wrong. It's about whose emotions dominate the psychological battlefield. You think tyrants only rule with swords and guns? No, the most effective tyrants rule with guilt. They weaponize your compassion against you. They make you carry their wounds as if they were your crimes. And you never even realize it's happening because you think you're helping, you think you're being moral. But morality without awareness is just servitude dressed up in virtue. Power isn't taken, it's given through unexamined emotional loyalty. And every time you default to believing that tears mean truth, that suffering means moral authority, you make yourself available, exploitable, governable. This is the real economy, not money, not gold, not laws, emotions. Emotions that can be leveraged, exchanged, weaponized, sacrificed, and sold. You think you're free because Noah's put you in chains. But if your compassion can be hijacked, you are already owned. Nietzsche didn't hate emotions. He hated the lie that emotions alone guarantee truth. Because once you believe that, you lose the only thing that could have saved you, the ability to question even the most beautiful feelings. And if you lose that, you'll keep playing a game you don't even know you're in, while someone else, smiling through their tears, quietly writes the rules. Most people don't want to love you. They want to manage you. They want to soothe you when it's convenient, ignore you when it's not, and manipulate your loyalty when it serves their needs. They call it care, but it's control. And the more sensitive you are to emotional cues, the easier you are to handle. When someone says, "I'm worried about you," it often means, "You're making me uncomfortable." When someone says, "I just want what's best for you," it often means, "I want you to choose what makes me feel secure." It's not always malice. In fact, it's rarely conscious. But it doesn't matter. Handled, not loved. Because love, real love, is brutal. Real love demands your growth, even if it threatens the relationship. Real love risks your resentment, your anger, even your departure. Handling, on the other hand, is safer. It keeps you docile, predictable, manageable. It rewards your weaknesses when they serve others, and punishes your strength when it threatens their control. It gives you just enough approval to keep you tethered, and just enough doubt to keep you obedient. It flatters your ego when you're compliant, and wounds it when you dare to defy. It feels like affection, but it's actually architecture, building walls around you made out of guilt, approval, and expectation. You think they're loving you. You think you're safe, but you're just being shaped, softened, domesticated. Because as long as you seek their approval, they hold the leash. And here's the brutal part. The better they are at handling you, the less you even notice it's happening. You start censoring yourself without being asked. You start doubting your instincts without being criticized. You start living a half-life, terrified of losing their validation, even if it costs you your soul. This is how empires fall without a war. This is how people surrender without a fight. Not by force, but by emotional domestication. Nietzsche saw it long before psychology gave it a name. People aren't destroyed by violence alone. They're dismantled by the soft hands that pretend to protect them and slowly, invisibly, erase their will. You think you need to be loved. You don't. You need to be respected. And respect isn't given to the most obedient. It's given to the most sovereign, the ones who can walk away from false affection without begging for it back. Every time you prioritize being loved over being powerful, you make yourself a tool in someone else's pocket. They won't say it out loud. They don't have to. You'll feel in your gut that uneasy sense that your emotions are being managed, not met, handled, not honored. And the longer you mistake one for the other, the further you drift from anything that could ever make you truly free. You didn't see it because you didn't want to. No one wants to believe that the love they've clung to was manipulation. No one wants to believe that the comfort they wrapped around themselves was a leash. It's easier, safer to stay blind. Denial isn't just ignorance. It's a survival strategy. Because if you admit you were being handled, you have to admit you were never really loved the way you imagined. You have to admit you wasted years chasing approval that was always conditional. You have to admit you were complicit in your own domestication. And that's a brutal mirror to stare into. So you flinch. You invent stories. You call manipulation concern. You call emotional blackmail protection. You call control love. You twist yourself into the most elaborate lies. Not because you're stupid, but because you're human. Your mind protects you with illusions because it knows the full truth would shatter your old self. And shattering hurts more than staying chained. Denial is anesthesia. It numbs the ache of betrayal before you're strong enough to tear the knife out yourself. But there's a hidden cost. The longer you deny the truth, the more you invest in the lie. You double down. You rationalize even harder. You defend your captors to protect your own pride. Because if you admit they were using you, you have to admit you allowed it. And that admission requires a death, not of your body, but of your illusions. The death of the part of you that believed you could be safe by being obedient. The death of the part of you that thought innocence would protect you. You didn't miss the signs because they weren't there. You missed them because you were desperate for them not to be. You saw the leash, you just called a lifeline. You felt the cage, you just decorated it and called a home. And every time you chose comfort over confrontation, the chains grew tighter. Not because you were weak, but because you were afraid. Afraid that if you faced it head on, you'd have no one left but yourself. And that's the terrifying truth you were trained to fear most. That your freedom might cost you your relationships. That your sovereignty might leave you alone. Denial whispers that you can have both, safety and freedom, obedience and power, comfort and truth. But Nietzsche knew better. He saw that the price of awakening is brutal. You lose the fantasy first, and only later do you build the real strength to live without it. If you keep choosing comfort, you'll keep being handled. If you keep choosing denial, you'll keep living in someone else's story. Freedom doesn't begin when you feel strong enough. It begins when you're willing to endure the pain of seeing things exactly as they are and refusing to look away. There's a moment most people are terrified to face. The moment when the story you built your life on begins to rot from the inside out. You feel it before you see it. A growing tension, a quiet panic, a sense that something doesn't add up, but you can't afford to look too closely. Because if you look, everything you've clung to might shatter. The illusion begins to crack, and you have a choice: awaken or collapse. Most collapse, not because they're weak, but because clinging to a lie feels safer than falling into the unknown. They double down. They romanticize the people who hurt them. They excuse the betrayals. They invent meanings where there are none. They tell themselves that suffering proves loyalty, that love means sacrificing self-respect, that pain must be the price of belonging. Anything to avoid the horror of admitting, I was wrong, I was blind, I was complicit. But that admission, brutal, humiliating, soul-stripping, is exactly what awakening demands. The crack in the illusion isn't the enemy. It's the invitation. It's the doorway to a version of yourself that isn't built on fantasy, dependency, or fear. And Nietzsche knew most people, when faced with the death of their illusions, don't evolve, they regress. They scramble to patch the cracks. They numb themselves with distractions, addictions, rage, or blame. They kill the part of themselves that saw too clearly. Because seeing means responsibility, and responsibility means solitude. When the illusion dies, your innocence dies with it. And without innocence, you are forced to stand naked in a world that no longer promises to catch you. It's easier to collapse, to beg the world to lie to you again, to pretend you never saw behind the curtain. But if you can resist the urge to crawl back into the dream, if you can stand in the burning wreckage of your former life without turning your eyes away, something brutal and magnificent happens. You are reborn, not as the self you wish you were, not as the version of you that fits nicely into society's scripts, but as the raw, fierce, unfinished thing you were always meant to be before fear made you small. The death of illusion is the birth of sovereignty. You stop needing the world to comfort you. You stop needing love to mean sacrifice. You stop needing suffering to prove your worth. You see clearly, and because of that, you choose clearly. No longer begging, no longer bargaining, no longer mistaking manipulation for affection or dependency for loyalty. When the illusion cracks, you either cling to the wreckage or you build a new life from the ashes. There is no middle ground. Collapse is comfortable. Awakening is savage. But only awakening makes you free. Most people don't fall in love with each other. They fall in love with each other's masks. The curated smiles, the performances, the small, strategic lies we tell to be accepted, wanted, needed. Love, as most experience it, is a desperate negotiation between two illusions, not a meeting of two real beings. Real love begins when the masks fall. And for most, that's where love ends. Because it's easy to love the version of someone that flatters your wounds. It's harder to love the flawed, hungry, terrified creature underneath. The creature that bleeds. The creature that doubts. The creature that sometimes fails to be lovable at all. And it's even harder to allow yourself to be seen that way. Without the defenses, without the armor, without the performance. Seeing without the mask is violent. It's uncomfortable. It's destabilizing. It strips away fantasy. It strips away the need to be perfect for approval. It forces you to confront the reality that true connection isn't based on idealization. It's based on recognition. You see the beauty and the ugliness, the nobility and the cowardice, the loyalty and the selfishness, and you love not because you are blind to these contradictions, but because you're not blind. This is the beginning of real love. Not worship, not dependency, not intoxication. Real love is not losing yourself in another. It's standing firmly inside yourself while holding space for another sovereign being. No illusions, no negotiations for self-worth, no silent agreements that say, "I'll pretend for you if you pretend for me." It's brutal because it requires the death of the fantasy. But it's beautiful because what remains is unkillable. Most never reach this point. They're too addicted to the high of being idealized, too terrified to be truly seen, too terrified to see another as they are, without the comforting haze of projection. But if you survive the collapse of the illusion, if you have the courage to keep your eyes open when it would be so easy to flinch, you find something that most people spend their entire lives searching for in vain. Connection without possession, intimacy without annihilation, love without lies, a love not rooted in need or fear or fantasy, but in freedom, in strength, in the willingness to be ugly, to be imperfect, to be human, and still be chosen. Real love does not say, "I need you to complete me." It says, "I see you, I choose you, and I am whole without you." That is why it's so rare. That is why it's so sacred, because it cannot be bargained for. It cannot be performed into existence. It can only emerge when both have walked through the fire of their illusions and survived. When the masks are gone and the mirrors are shattered and nothing remains but the raw, unadorned truth, that's when real love finally begins. At this point, there's no more ignorance left to hide behind. You know the truth. You know most love isn't love. It's projection. It's bargaining. It's survival dressed up in poetry. And now you stand at a crossroads that few people even recognize, let alone have the courage to cross. Will you face reality, or will you crawl back into the myth? The myth is tempting. It's warm. It's familiar. It tells you you're good enough as long as you keep pretending. It rewards you for keeping the mask glued to your skin until you forget it was ever a mask at all. But it's a lie, and deep down, you already feel it. You can go back to chasing fairy tales, try to complete yourself through someone else's eyes. You can choose the high, the fantasy, the cycle, or you can choose something harder, something uglier, something infinitely more real. Facing reality means loneliness. It means responsibility. It means stripping away everything comforting and ornamental until you're left with something raw and unshakable, yourself. It means building love from the ground up with eyes wide open, knowing full well that it will demand more from you than you ever want to give. It means risking everything for something that cannot be faked, bought, or stolen. This is the final warning, because once you see the truth, pretending becomes a form of self-hatred. You will either rise to the level of the love you say you want, or you will keep betraying yourself in the name of illusions. There is no third option, so choose. Choose reality. Choose strength. Choose to love, not to be completed, but to be seen, to be met, to be free. Because the longer you cling to the myth, the further you drift from the life you were meant to live, and the love you were actually meant to find. If this cut deeper than you expected, good. It means you're awake. Don't let it fade. Subscribe if you're ready for more ruthless truth and the transformation that comes with it. No ilusiones, no compromises, only power. See you in the next one.